Thank you very much for joining us, and I'm going to hand over to HousingLIN CEO Jeremy Porteus for the rest of the session.
Chris, thanks ever so. And can I also thank you? I think this is your first happy hour or TAPPI Hour that you're hosting on behalf of the HousingLIN, and welcome to the team. It's great to have you with us. For those of you who don't know Chris has actually been behind the scenes with the LIN for a good decade or more. So I think this is your first outing, so to speak, sort of publicly supporting and working closely with us. And for those of you, we also have Jerome behind the scenes as well. I can see he's on our screen. But we've got a great session, as Chris outlined, for you. It really builds on last week's session, which was all about co-production and co-designing as part of Co-Pro Week or Co-Production Week. And we're going to continue with that theme, but very much through the lens of technology and technology-enabled care, and how organizations, suppliers, manufacturers, and also users and residents of services are responding to this, both in terms of understanding the capability of it, but also the impact it has in terms of everyday lives. And we're delighted to be joined, as Chris said, by a number of different people who are going to have a little different take on this, and it builds on the work that the LIN has been doing through both our HAPPI program and TAPPI, which perhaps also to give a head shout to our sponsors, the Venture Foundation and the Shape Exchange, and Everon as well. So we're going to kick off with Everon, and we're delighted that James can join us, and he'll be sharing some of the work that they've been doing across the country, in particular in the Northeast. Michael will follow, touching on the work of ExtraCare Charitable Trust, a leading retirement village operator, predominantly in England and the Midlands and the Southeast England, and again, the work around wellbeing and how that touches in with technology. And Just Checking's Amy Lewis, really pleased that you could join us this afternoon. I hope this will be first of many with Just Checking as well, and really get an insight from your perspective about the engagement and touching base with residents as well. And as Chris said, please do post questions into the question and answer box as we go along, and we'll have 10 minutes or so at the close to respond to those as a team. So thanks ever so for your participation, and look forward to hearing what everyone has to say this afternoon. So James, can we kick off with you, and a warm welcome from a very sweltering Gloucestershire.
Thanks, Jeremy. Appreciate it. I'll just share my screen now.
I'll do that for you.
My presentation. Oh, thanks, Jerome. Appreciate it. Apologies for that, but
don't worry. Over to you.
Thank you. And as I say, thanks, Jeremy, Jerome, Chris, and the rest of the HousingLIN team for having me today. Really appreciate it, and it's a great opportunity to talk about the technology-enabled co-designed housing for better later living. That's a real focus of ours at Everon Group UK. You know, for us, it's not just about replacing kit on site. It's about using this move from analog to digital as an opportunity to sort of build safer, more resilient, and more personalized later living services. You know, we have to have a practical approach. We have to have a practical focus and look at how the new incoming digital infrastructure can support resident confidence. It can support early intervention and can also provide better information for housing teams. I think those have got to be some really key areas of consideration going forward. Next slide, please. So I wanted to start with this sort of opportunity that it is presented, this idea that you know, the analog to digital switchover has created some urgency, and it's given us a compliance pressure. But it should just be the starting point. So you know, it's not just about saying how do we stay compliant and how do we move from an analog to digital system, but it's how can we design a better support system around residents as well. And that obviously means really focusing on resident safety, resident independence, and putting kit, you know, into schemes that gives reassurance to staff members and residents and users, and gives practical tools for schemes, for staff on schemes, and for alarm receiving centres as well. And I think that is a real area where we need to not just think about the switch over. As I said, it's about using it as a service opportunity. We are able to transform that service if we get some key areas right. Next slide, please. Thank you. So again, I just thought it would be good to sort of highlight the key differences where we are right now with this traditional model in terms of, the alarm is raised, the call is answered, and then the help is coordinated. And I think that can often lead to limited learning. Whereas what we're trying to do, as I said, with this opportunity, is to create a digital preventative model where you've constantly got an eyes on the system, visibility across all schemes, which I'll touch about, is something that Home Group really liked. This idea of smart alarm routing to either staff or alarm receiving centres or both, and looking at those early risk indicators. For us, it's about getting the kit onto schemes, but then sort of gathering that information into a central point, and using that in order to inform subsequent care decisions. That's the real key. And obviously, it's important to emphasize at this point that it is not about removing the human touch or the human element of care. It's about helping that and making everything more efficient. Next slide, please. So I think this again gives this opportunity. Presents us, or at least can lead us down the road of using it to sort of turn specifications into almost design principles in terms of, making sure everything's fully digital, wireless, resilient. You have an ability to observe what's happening on schemes at all times, that flexibility and the interoperable approach, because with that good platform that I'm talking about, that can be a foundation that can sort of evolve for the changing needs of residents, staff members, and as I said, influence those subsequent care pathway decisions. These are just some of the elements that Home Group and Progress liked. This idea of being fully digital from day one, with various elements like the mesh, sort of site-wide safety critical coverage. Again, I won't go into all of them, but it's just this idea of creating those fully digital specifications, and as I say, really providing that platform to support staff, and then obviously onto residents as well. Next slide, please. These are just two sort of real life examples. Obviously, you're very well talking about it sort of theoretically, but we like to talk about the real life examples. So we've got two sort of big contracts going on, or sort of have formed recently. Biggest one being Home Group. So they've trusted us with their sort of full national rollout, digital upgrade of their group living schemes. Again, they like that wireless mesh network, safety critical coverage for sort of 3,500 hubs across the UK. Similar with Progress, just on a slightly smaller scale, but sort of at a regional Lancashire level. Again, it's that they wanted a fully digital platform to support care decisions and make sure and sort of effectively manage risk throughout their schemes. And again, it's that foundation of like the information being readily available for them to then use later down the line. A fully digital platform allows them to do that. Next slide. Thank you. Again, this idea of co-design is really interesting to us, and I feel like a way in which we've sort of championed that is through our partnership with East Kent College. So we have a sort of partnership with them where we're running a program where we're basically setting up with sort of 150 to 200 students. We're sort of creating a partnership apprenticeship program where we're setting up realistic sort of care environments, and they're able to sort of test devices and work on various things. It's about, you know, testing with younger people who are then going to be able to shape the future of this industry, and I think this is our commitment to that. And yeah, it's an ongoing project that we're keen to sort of feedback on as we get further down the line with it, but something we're really proud of, and something that we'll be keeping HousingLIN up to date with as we move forward with that. Next slide, please. So again, this is sort of like a practical roadmap. We've seen that this has worked for Progress Housing Group and Home Group. We want to start with the outcomes first. You know, look at and sort of define the outcomes that will be best suited for the residents, the staff, and define those service outcomes. Then you design it around that that journey, and then you build that digital foundation that I was talking about with that specification. And then sort of use the constant, almost like monthly meetings with staff and residents to, you know, change and adapt services as and when. You know, it's not just one size fits all approach. It's what works best as we move forward with staff members and residents, because as we know, services and sort of requirements change over time. And then that sort of leads that co-production and that partnership approach, and then finally sort of end up with those data trend and insights that I was talking about being delivered through the digital platform. You can then turn them into subsequent actions, and that's where the real value is, and that's what Home Group and Progress have seen. Next slide, please. So yeah, that's it for me. As I said, really important for us to remember, you know, it's not about removing the human element. It's about sort of giving residents more confidence, giving staff better information, and yeah, providing you know, a future-proof, fully digital platform. Yeah, this is a chance to build a foundation for sort of that resident-centered focus that I know we're all aiming towards. And yeah, that's it from me. Thanks again for having me, and any questions outside of the panel, just let me know. I'll put my details on the delegates list, so look forward to hearing from you.
James, thanks ever so. That was really helpful. And also, just to pick up sort of both the work you're doing with housing organisations, but also I think you ended that sort of thinking, you know, that resident first approach, which is really critical. And I see Angela, who's on our actual SHAPE board, has also raised that issue about, you know, how do we really proactively engage with people in later life. And I think you've touched on that as an intro, and I'm sure both Michael and Amy will pick up on that, because again, that's a core part of their work. And I know Home Group are both mainstream housing provider as well as specialist, and Progress probably more supported living, so you clearly work across that patch. So yeah, really interested in that, and we very much look forward to following your work's progress with both those organisations and more generally.
Thank you.
We're going to move on to Michael. And Michael, lovely to have you back with the LIN. You've been a frequent contributor to our happy hours over the years, but I don't think you've ever presented specifically on the tech piece.
No, I don't think I have.
But we've been following again some of the work that you've done over the years as an organisation, and how this has been very instrumental in participating and looking at the well-being aspects as well. And I remember, I think you came with some exercise machines, some robotic exercise machines, to one of our conferences once upon a year, and I'm sure it's moved on a hell of a long way since then. So the platform's yours.
Thank you. We've looked at quite a lot of technology over the years, and just if people aren't familiar with ExtraCare, this is a typical ExtraCare village. The reason why I like to show this is Hughenden Gardens in High Wycombe. I like to start with this picture, just so you can imagine where the kind of environment where some of this technology gets used in, and also some of the unique problems that somewhere of this scale would have. There's a lot of residents to try and communicate with, try and keep independent. There could be 300 odd residents living there, and they're all going to have a different level of frailty, maybe 15% of them living with dementia. They're all going to want different things and have different needs. And so whenever I'm trying to think about technology, really trying to think about what's going to make the biggest impact in some of our communities. There's so much technology out there. I get fascinated by it, but I could also get quite dazzled by it and start purchasing all sorts of different things for us to try. So in my role, I always try and come back to this clinical frailty scale. It probably seems like an odd place to start with a tech project, but the reason why I come back to it is what is going to keep our residents happy, healthy, is independent for as long as possible. And frailty and staying independent, we've found is really, really important to our residents. Our residents quite often move in at around a 4, and I really want to find things that keep the person there and delay them from becoming frailer, delay that person having to relocate to higher needs housing. Ideally, I'd like the person to stay with us right up to end of life. And a lot of things have to be in place for that journey to happen in the right way, but technology can also play a huge part. So I often try and come back to, well, what's our reason for being whenever I'm looking at any new technology projects, and also trying to retain the technology projects that we've already started, that we don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater, so to speak, because there's always something new coming along with technology. What should we retain, and where can we add new stuff that's going to make a difference? So far, a lot of the work that we've done has been around improving the experience of the resident in their apartment. So actually using everyday technology that residents can get their hands on quite easily. We've deliberately done that because we've tried not to introduce too many things into an apartment yet that the resident couldn't easily understand, go out and find and buy themselves, and use in a real way in their day-to-day life. So our smart apartment, we had one in our Stoke Gifford village in Bristol, and this is a picture from the smart apartment in Solihull village, in Solihull. This is the only smart apartment we have now. It's really a demonstration space where we can test out different types of technology in that apartment and look at how could it work in practice. The idea of this apartment was to show residents that by making simple changes around the home, use of Alexas for things like prompts, automating your lighting, having the robot hoover, the blinds that can open and close themselves, the smart plugs being particularly popular, it can just make life a little bit easier around the home. Then also looking at how can it reduce falls if I'm not walking around a dark apartment in the night. Falls prevention has been a huge part actually of a lot of the technology that we've tried to look at, and making the technology as accessible for residents as possible. I think many of our residents still think that technology has to be something overly complicated, but it can be really simple. We try and use the simplest stuff in the smart market. Same with the smart apartment, the smart market. We took technology from the apartment and went on a bit of a tour. Our former research and technology lead, Kerry, did this, and it was a great piece of work. She visited every one of our locations with her assistant to actually demonstrate in person some of the technology that residents could use in their own home. That was also featured in the smart apartment. Not every resident in ExtraCare is going to be able to go to the smart apartment, so actually having demonstrations on site and allowing other residents to tell us, well, what difficulties do they have day by day, whether it be about communication, whether it be about things like their mobility. What would they want us to look into and find solution for? All of that work ended up being put together in a really great video on our website, where a resident was filmed in the smart apartment interacting with her granddaughter and the equipment in the apartment to show residents, by incorporating this everyday technology into your life, this is how things could be made a bit easier for you. The apartment's still there. It's certainly something that we still want to keep pushing for residents, and always trying to find new things that will add to the apartment that might make someone's life quite just that little bit easier, I came across a really clever device the other day. Whether you describe it as a piece of technology, I'm not sure, but I certainly thought it was innovative, where it gets attached to the shower. If I don't have the dexterity or the memory anymore to use shower gel while I'm in the shower, if this device that's attached to the shower has the shower gel in it, and I turn the shower on, I'm not just having water landing on me, I'm also having the thing that's going to help me clean as well. And just a really simple device that could sometimes make a big difference for someone. The simple devices are quite often my favorite ones. Some of the work that we've been doing since, smart spots in our communal areas is something we're going to be start introducing this summer. So again, not many residents can make it to Solihull if you're in Bristol or High Wycombe. They might not get to see the smart apartment in its fullest, but we still want people to be interacting with that technology in a natural way, and then thinking, okay, could that actually help me in some way at home? Should I get a smart plug? I'm always leaving the iron on, or would it be easier for me to have something like that so I don't have to reach over the TV all the time to turn the plugs off? We want to introduce smart spots in probably about 3 or 4 villages between August and October, so that, again, the everyday simple technology, the Alexas, anything that can control the light, can control plugs, so that residents can, let's say they go into a communal area like the cafe bar, they happen to sit next to it, they can read some information about it. If they like it, they can find out where they can go and get that item and how to use it. It will also mean that we don't have to have 2 staff constantly going around to all of our locations on a tour to demonstrate the technology in person. We want people to be coming across it naturally, and we've learned enough about the tech now and how it helps residents, where we think we can confidently put it in front of residents and say, this piece of tech might be able to help you with X, Y, or Z. A pilot that we have going at the moment, Meet Molly. Meet Molly was an organisation that we came across a few months ago, where they use an AI system to support residents with things like memory prompts. So, taking medication, remembering to drink, but it was mostly around social interaction. So actually, by residents giving their details to Meet Molly, the system could connect them for phone calls, match them for when it came to their personality and interest, in the hope that they might then start to meet up with each other in the village. One of the main reasons I wanted to pilot Meet Molly, and we've got about 40 residents going through this at the moment, was I was really interested in how will the residents respond to AI, because we hear lots of stories about lots of assumptions about what older people think about AI. Do people like it? Do people not like it? So we really wanted to do a project that was very clearly had an AI element to it, to see how the residents reacted. And so far, from the 40 participants, it's been very popular, particularly the independence prompts. Some residents have used something like an Alexa to do that. Some people even have it as a care call or a wellbeing call. But this was another popular way of people just having a prompt or a reminder to do something at home through different means. We have a meeting with Meet Molly in about 2 weeks to look at what's that pilot told us, and should this be something that we do in all of our locations, or at least give residents the option to sign up for a system like this. At the moment, we're just testing it out in about 4 locations, 2 large villages like Hewenden that you've just seen, and 2 smaller schemes. And in the smaller schemes, the age profile is generally higher, the frailty is generally higher, and normally there's more people living with dementia and cognitive problems in those locations as well. A few other things that we have coming up. The AO Tech sensors they're very much part of what we've been doing at the moment. We put all sorts of different sensors, obviously with the residents' consent, in apartments to measure all kinds of things that can be really useful to help us care for the residents' health and well-being. So from some sensors like that, we can tell whether the curtains have been opened, depending on the light levels. We can tell, is the resident cooking as frequently as they used to be. We can use those short term to figure out, is there actually a problem or an issue in that apartment whereby someone's cognition's got worse, someone's really struggling to operate something like their heating, and so we're seeing changes in that person's behavior, and also trying to detect falls in a non-intrusive way as well, because we're very much anti the residents having things like cameras going into their apartment. They're quite cheap and easy to get hold of now. We have noticed family reliance on sometimes cameras being put into apartments, and it's something we're trying to avoid. We're working with an organisation called Chook. They developed a very, very interesting system that can control all manner of things in an apartment, all geared into a light switch in every room. So obviously, you know, whether the lights are on or off, the heating, so that's the energy efficiency side. But the part I'm quite interested in working with Chook on, and we're just drawing up a proposal at the moment to see how much of what's in the smart apartment can be done through their system. The smart apartment's brilliant, but it does rely on quite a lot of devices in a small space. So you might get 7 different types of sensor and an Alexa in the resident's living room. Can we reduce that down to just one and have it all in the light switch? Or, you know, how can we make it as easy as possible to roll some of these technologies out at scale? If you've got 262 apartments in every, you know, near enough every village, 7 devices per room to get the right effect, that's quite a lot of devices and quite a lot for somebody to manage. And also VR headsets. We've just had retro VR headsets for the last year. We're keeping them for another year because it's fun. Technology should be fun as well. One of the things we've noticed with the VR headsets is it gives residents who never thought that they would use technology, didn't really have an interest in it, if they go to an activity where we use technology and they enjoy it and they have fun with it and they can see the playful side of it, they then might be much more likely to adopt some of the things that we talk about in the smart apartment that are more related to improving their independence, avoiding falls. But it doesn't always have to be that kind of heavy health side of technology we're talking to the residents about. We want them to have fun with it as well. And for some residents, have an experience with technology that they might not have had or come across had we not worked with the supplier externally and put it in front of the person. Some of our residents are great and bring all sorts of technology in with them and are very, very much interested in the topic of technology and how it can help them. But we still have a big chunk of our population where it's very new to them. There might even be some skepticism about it. So the more we can expose people to, the better, really. It was very much part of our last research and innovation strategy, and it's very much part of the work that we'll be doing going forward as well. And we're always happy to hear from new people with whatever new device or idea that they've developed to see how it can help our residents, really. And thank you for listening.
Michael, what a whirlwind of things that you've covered there, and really, really excellent. So I was struck as you sort of started off by talking about that link to frailty, but also you looked at it not in terms of a medical decline, but very much from a holistic prevention approach. And that sort of underpinned, I think, a lot of what you're saying about making it the well-being, the impact, about how giving the voice and control back to residents, whether that's through AI or through other aspects. So no, really, really interesting and exciting presentation. We really look forward to hearing more about Molly and other acronyms or other names as they develop. And as an aside, just if you're not aware, delegates who are attending this afternoon, we currently in the LIN have a survey out trying to measure the impact of AI in specialist and supported housing. So please do feel free to respond. I think the deadline is this Friday. So if you're interested in AI and what the impact could be for our sector, please do, and on residents as well, please do have a look at that survey. I've just quickly referenced that because I know, Amy, AI is another issue I'm sure very much central to what Just Checking are doing, and we're really pleased that you could join us this afternoon. So I'm going to hand over to you now.
What do I working?
I'll see that. I can't hear you very well. I can't hear you very well, Amy. I don't know if it's just me.
Hear me very well. Okay, is that any better now?
Yeah, that's much better. Yeah? That's great.
Can you see the screen?
Yeah, all good. Perfect. Thank you.
Okay. Right, so I'm going to be talking to you today, Ever the Rebel rather, about a combination of good housing, how that fits with data-led support, and how technology can enable more autonomy over our own home spaces and what that looks like. But specifically, I'm going to be looking today at supported living settings and talking you through that. The work that we've been doing at Just Checking really lends itself to the view of co-production, because what we're looking to do, what we're aiming to do really, is work with individuals to understand how environment works for them, and in doing so really work to reduce restrictions, to give people more control over their own space, and for some people that we're working with, really give them for the first times in their life, potentially time and space on their own at home in a safe way. And actually the ways in which we're doing that is by utilising all of the different options that have already been discussed today, but by bringing that together and combining it really well and very thoughtfully with the technologies that are available. My background, as you may guess as we work through, is in supporting adults with learning disabilities and autistic people to live more independently and to live the life of their choosing. So really our team at Just Checking have that in the back of their mind when we're designing spaces with people. And I think that's really important, and it's an important approach to take. Just a little bit about Just Checking, in case you don't know. You may already know us for quite some time. It's been about 23 years supporting people through the use of sensor-based technologies and activity monitoring systems. I think for a lot of people, they'll know us from the assessment side of things, so using data and using insights to understand people's support needs. And more recently, the work that we've been doing in my kind of 7 years at Just Checking is around looking at the home space, the environment for people, and seeing where technology can fit into that in order to be more enabling and give people more choice and control over how they're supported and what that looks like. And that's really where I'm going to focus today. I'm going to start with a really quick story about Greg. I think when we're talking about co-production, we need to make sure that we keep the person in mind around this. And Greg is someone who really likes gardening. He likes his own space. He likes the outdoors and being outdoors. He does like partying and being around his friends and family and all of those things. And the reason why I'm really bringing Greg to your attention today is because to the outside world, Greg's home space and the home that was built for him and with him and around him really ticked a lot of boxes. So on paper, it was a really successful support service for him. He lived with two other people. They both had a learning disability, but he had a massive bedroom. He had lots of space on his own. He had a lovely ensuite, and he had a really good staff team. He had the one-to-one support that he wanted and needed. His family were really happy that he was secure in a space that he could access things he wanted to go out and see. He had his own car, all of these things. So when we're looking at the tick boxes of tick, 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 yeah, is this the right home? A lot of those things were ticked, and he had lots of outdoor space and all of those things. But the thing I want to draw your attention to, more so than anything today, is really getting to grips with people's individual and personal understanding and experience of their environment. So whilst Greg did enjoy all of those things, he also, on many occasions, found it very difficult if he walked into the kitchen and there was somebody using the kitchen side that he wanted to use, or if the back door was left open into the garden and actually he liked things closed, or if the TV was on in the living room and actually he wanted a quiet space at that moment. And unfortunately, Greg is somebody I worked with really early in my career. And unfortunately, Greg's story, where the bit I know up to, I'm hoping there's more positive that comes behind it, is a very sad one, whereby all of those things that were kind of like the little nuances of things in his home environment, all of the things that he liked in certain ways, actually was dramatically stressful for him. And for him, this led to a situation where the staff team started to try and work around, those three people in that space, having different calendars. So, one person would be out when the other person used the kitchen and those things. They tried to maneuver and shift around it and really think of the person and the people in that situation as to what that should look like for them. But unfortunately, it then escalated to the point where PBS teams were involved, clinical teams were involved, and Greg had to leave that situation. He ended up being sectioned for a short period. And the team were really, really forced at that point to review what housing meant to him and what the home looked like for him. And his story really reminds me that where we live, where we call home, is about autonomy. It's about ownership. It's about having the things where I want them, how I need them. It's about having the people coming into my space that I'm aware of and me consenting to that. And it's really deeply personal. And for a lot of autistic people like Greg, we actually have to be even more considerate of what environment is and what it looks and what it feels like, because the noises and the temperature and the lighting and the visual cues and the potential to be overstimulated or understimulated in our environment can have a massive dramatic impact on where our life leads and what that looks like for us. So I want to talk you through today, what if instead of those things, actually my home was my complete personal space, everything laid out the way I want it, no one in my home coming in or out without my permission or without me knowing when that's happening and from where and what that looks like. I want to talk about people having full access to everything and understanding how to operate those things and how important that can be for people. It could be the simple things like music and lighting, and Michael's already spoken today about the impact that can make, those small things, those small changes, and people being available to you, supporting you when you need them, and with your total consent, really, and what that looks like. So for me, that's the basics of a home, isn't it? And so the work that we've been doing at Just Checking is really working with teams up and down the country on that model, utilising sensors that would trigger around the home environment. So as somebody moves about their home, what does that look like for them? And providing insights that are really kind of translatable to staff members through a handset, so they understand what's going on for that person. They're aware of the information that they need to know. And it will raise alerts during that process. So we'll be looking at things like risk and understanding what those individual risks look like for people and when to respond and how to respond. And staff will be made aware of that through the technology. And know that actually this is about targeted intentional support, not just about being there at all times just in case. It's about really thinking about when staff should be there and when actually it's better that the staff are not in that situation, and how can we make safe that scenario if that's the case. And I think technology is a real enabler of that, and they're some of the ways that we should be exploring it and using it. We also include within the setup the optional routes to kind of really smart ways to respond to people. So, you'll all be really aware of things like intercoms and those kind of things, but actually are there other options? Could it just be through audio? Could it be video on certain things? And can we use the triggers and the events to understand how to respond in those ways? Plus the ability to enable somebody to really take control of their own space. So do I know how to get a drink for myself? Can I do that? What does that look like? Do I have the visual cues? Do I have the support around it to do those things? And when that can't happen, the ability to also automate things. And that's, for me, quite an exciting space, but also we need to be conscious of and aware of the fact that when we automate things, we're actually taking away control from people. So making sure that it's placed in the right times and in the right situations. So for us, when we're co-producing support plans with people that introduce tech and really look at the environment and how we can enable through environment, we're looking at these four areas. Am I actively in control of my own space? So for one person, it was a kick plate on their front door. They couldn't use the fob system, and it in itself is another technology, isn't it? But it's making sure that the technologies that we use are inclusive and that they are accessible to people. So instead of having that fob on the front door that actually is inaccessible to me, having a kick plate that means I can open my front door. It could be a simple thing like having a water tap on your fridge, or not all tech needs to be high tech, as Michael said earlier as well. It could be an easy interface with my music, so I can make my space how I want it. It could be prompts around my home. It could be clap controlled lighting. I mean, we can get really high tech. It could be things like a button for my washing machine. So instead of all the fiddly buttons and dials that I don't really understand, actually, can we interface that easier and make that more accessible to me? When I can't control those things myself, actually, how can we make the home work for me? How can we make it work harder? So can it automate lights? Perhaps I'm getting anxious, so we're using the information from the sensors and the data and the insights that gives us to understand what that looks like for somebody and then to respond to that. So I'm getting anxious, I'm starting to pace around my home, I can hear quite a lot of noise within that, and I've seen that pattern before. And when that happens, I'm going to lower the lights, I'm going to turn my favourite music on. And obviously all of this needs to be part of a considered co-produced plan with people. It could be things like I really want to be able to enjoy my own space and have privacy in my personal care, but I might flood my bathroom. So actually when that's about to happen, being able to turn those taps off and do that automatically. One person that we support flushes items down the toilet, and for them, the cost of that is actually becoming really, really difficult, so that it's really hitting their pocket is the number of times that we need to get our plumbers and fix that scenario. So actually we could just turn that water off. So at this point, those items aren't being flushed down the toilet and blocking the whole system. Actually, we're preventing that situation from happening. It could be that I wake up and on my way to the bathroom, that pathway is lit for me, all those things. Managing my support, we can build in those technologies that enable that through things like a sound sensor. Somebody we support shouts and that calls on their staff, and they come to them in response to that. Another lady will very obviously and clearly physically ask her staff to leave. And actually, we're here looking at balance now, because we do have a duty of care in certain situations. We know that sometimes in someone's best interest, we do need to intervene without their absolute consent at that time. So in these situations, that lady will have asked staff to leave. And the ideal scenario would be that, you know, when she's ready for them to return, she presses that button, they return, and that's what they work towards. But actually sometimes the system will pick up things that passively, that are risks that staff know that they need to respond to, so they will respond to that, and that's how it's supporting that scenario. And then obviously the insights that those patterns can give us can really support an agile, targeted support plan that really enables us to respond according to need and respond according to people's wants and wishes. One team, they use, it's really important to understand somebody's sleep pattern the night before, because it will affect the way that they support in the day. So they have two support plans. They have one that is activated when the person has had a good night's sleep, and actually they're pushing the person, they're challenging them, they're striving for more opportunities. And then there's another support plan that actually, if it's been a poor night, they're actually working towards getting back into that routine. So it can really affect the way that we can respond in the daytime. And obviously the insight that we can learn from an environment could be really key to somebody. For some people, that kind of 1 to 2 degree temperature rise in a space can really affect their mood and their distress levels. And by being aware of that, by managing that, by understanding what that looks like in that space, we can be far more responsive. I'm just looking at time. We'll probably need to be a little bit more considerate. So I'll just run through a couple of really, really quick examples, just a minute or two each, not a minute, 1 minute each. Alex is someone who is a good example of how really thoughtful design can be really liberating. So he's somebody who was 20 years in seclusion in a hospital setting, you know, the most restrictive support you can possibly imagine. And actually his biggest stressor is direct staff supervision. So it was really difficult for that team to think creatively about how to support him in his own space without staff there. And actually these are the opportunities that technology can bring to us. So we started by asking the questions: what support does he want? What does he need? What are the risks? What does that look like? What is the data telling us? And by supporting him in a little bit more of a hands-off way, giving him space when he wanted it, giving them the support when he needed it, actually the staff team could build relationships with him that were not based on kind of doing two. They were very much about, this is your space, this is your home, you can have privacy, you know, personal care in times that you want it. He enjoys watching films and all of those things, so he could set his home up around the things that he wanted to do and the ways in which he wanted to use it. And by having that system in place in the background, it was that safety net to enable more opportunities for him and more opportunities for staff to build those relationships. Another example is some work that Dimensions have been doing. So this was around a transforming, it was like a transitional service for young people, many of which were coming straight out of, living with parents into this space. And actually their focus was more about the data delivering a more informed PBS approach. So understanding those patterns, what do they look like? And providing that remote monitoring for the at-risk times, or to manage risks, so that they had a much more fluid model of support. Staff were there in really targeted, intentional ways. So the direct support that was being delivered was very deliberate, rather than staff waiting around. The alternative to this was 24/7 support, staff being there in their properties at all times. Now they have opportunities to take that step back. And what they found was that it provided the young people their opportunities to grow their own skills. We know that we need to take a step back in order to enable people to do for themselves, and we know that actually we should be aiming for delivering, particularly with young people, the idea of the support workers' role is to make themselves redundant. I'm not sure if you've heard that before, but I've always found that actually rings really true, that that's what we should be striving for, that we're not needed in that situation. And you can see from the outcomes that they've achieved that actually this has worked really well from them, and not just from an individual's quality of life perspective, but from the way that staff feel about their roles, about how families feel about having that access to that transparent information, and they can see what's happening for their loved ones. And then from a public kind of funds perspective, actually, this makes sense. It's a win-win situation in all situations. We can see the impact this has on the direct support requirement. Across the board, we're seeing those similar outcomes: reduction in medications, reduction in incidents, reduction in behaviours of distress, all from providing the space and the right environment that's working around the person in order to take that step back and actually be very intentionally there and provide people the space when they want and need it. So I will just leave you with this kind of question set, really. When we're looking to design homes with people, these really are the questions that we start from. And these are some of the questions that we ask in order to really think about that space, think about how technology can enable more autonomy and more control over your home environment, and to really get to grips and understand how that should look for each individual person.
Amy,
Thanks,
thank
Jeremy.
you. No, Amy, thank you. That's a really great presentation and built on beautifully from James and Michael's. And I'm struck that there are a cluster of P's. We've talked about the partnership working and how this is really important across all of you. Prevention, again, Michael was very strong on that. But what I've also heard from all of you is around the person-centered, putting the people at the centre. You've drawn out more about a place-based, about the home and the environment as well being critical, and those outcomes that you highlighted at the end demonstrate the productivity is not just about the technology, the tech ability, but it's also about the outcomes for users and residents, the citizen-led approach. And it reminds me very much of what you're describing around the work of social care futures and the glorious lives. Thinking about everybody should be able to live well in this place that they call home, with the people that they want to live with, and communities that they love. So really strong presentations from all three of you. Thanks very much. We've got about just under 10 minutes or so just to whiz through a few questions. At one point, I didn't think we were going to have any, but over the last 10 minutes or so, all of you have stimulated those, and I'm just going to go through them. And in fact, Angela, who works very closely with Community Catalyst and the team up there, talks about where can people who own their own flat place get the advice, impartial information and practical support to set up and use smart devices. So much advice seems to be sales. Now, that's a really interesting point, Angela, and something that we on the Older Persons Task Force a couple of years ago highlighted and made recommendation for a witch-like style place, as a consumer place to go to. But can I just hand over to James, Michael and Amy, any sort of information about that? Not necessarily the witch style, but where people can go for information and advice.
there's actually quite an interesting new development that the National Care Forum are overseeing at the moment in the care technologist roles.
Yes.
So actually, I foresee that in a few years' time, maybe 18 months. Let's be positive. That question will come up less and less, because we will have centralized roles within care providers and within care settings that can be the go-to person for and kind of tap into all of those things, and we'll have that knowledge internally. So I'm really excited by that, and I think that that's where we're headed. I think for now, people like yourself, Jeremy, and the whole team around you, there is an online guide called the Care Tech Guide, so that might be a useful source of information as well. Digital Care Hub, they are full of lots of information that you can utilize and can help with those kind of decisions, and obviously the TSA as well. So I think there are lots of opportunities to find out more. Also within local councils, they will all have a tech team, and they will all have tech information and sessions that you can attend. So quite often I'm seeing more and more them kind of being open invites for people to come and learn about the technologies in the local area. So keeping our own local council websites as well and having a look there.
And James, is that your experience as well, engaging with local authorities, with the housing provider sector? It sounds like there isn't the one-stop shop yet, but it's about trying to coordinate at a locality level what that type of information is overlaid with the TSA, the LIN, and others. Any thoughts?
Yeah, absolutely. I think obviously the question was related to maybe people who own their own home and don't have are not under the umbrella of a housing association. That's where most of our experiences. But yeah, spot on from Amy. The TSA are great and offer a lot of advice. And yeah, if you do own your own home, you're not necessarily with a housing association sort of landlord setup, then yeah, local council is a great place to start. There's dedicated sort of digital inclusion teams all over the place, and yeah.
No, that's great. And Michael, your own experience, I mean, you've talked about both new build but also retrofitting, and that's a big issue. It's not just about sort of looking at the brand new ExtraCare schemes. You have managed a number of those. Do you find some challenges around that, about how to access grants or self-funders, or what's your experience around the outlay?
We're deliberately trying to pick products as well that self-funders that were quite accessible for. We've not had much luck with trying to, when it's come to working with local authorities and such, about getting technology integrated into what might make the person's care easier, for instance. And I was also very conscious about that point about selling as well. We've never wanted it to look like we're selling the resident a particular piece of equipment, which is why what we've tended to do is, can the resident tell us what they struggle with? The team can have a look at what's out there that might be useful, and we'll try and find the right fit for that particular problem. That's another approach that we've often taken. In fact, our former research lead, she put together a whole sheet when she did the smart market that residents could have. If you struggle with this, these are some things that might be quite helpful. And even just something as simple as Wi-Fi, sometimes we found problematic in some of our older villages. All of the devices we were using were reliant on Wi-Fi, and if there was a bit of a black spot or something like that in one of the villages, it caused real problems. So sometimes things as simple as that were the problem. But in the most part, if people understood why they were going to use the technology, they were happy to adopt it and use it. We tried to avoid, because I get this a lot, people might pitch to me a piece of equipment that looks really interesting. It's probably very expensive, but I can't see how I'd use it with a resident, or what a resident might use it for, and how it actually fits in making that resident's life easier. And if I can't see that, then I'm normally having to kind of turn down lots of pitches. It's always the simple stuff that seems to get through.
Yeah. But I think, James kicked off by talking about the digital switchover, by the end of January. So if you're having those Wi-Fi black spots, how to look at how to boost those, because some of that equipment won't work, some of those appliances won't work. And I'm sure that's something that's familiar for Amy, James, and yourself and specifically. There's a really interesting question about, it's not just about the capital outlay, it's also about the ongoing maintenance, management and revenue. Any thoughts about that?
Well, no, go on. You go, Michael.
Just a quick one for me. We've been trying to do projects. So I budget set every November for my research and innovation budget. We fund a lot of our projects through that budget. Sometimes we've hit a bit of a stumbling block then keeping a project ongoing, and we are very much trying to do it. So if the resident finds it helpful, it might be something they can self-fund. Quite a lot of our projects, when it's come to scale, have been reliant on self-funders. We pilot and put things in front of people, but yeah, sometimes the financing of things it can create a lot of barriers.
Yeah,
some really interesting. Yeah, come on, Amy. Yep, sorry.
No, sorry, Jeremy. Our experience is the same, that actually, well, we tend to get purchased through business as usual within somebody's care planning, and actually where you've got a direct payment. So if somebody is in receipt of care, then a really good route is to use a direct payment or an individual service fund, and then through that there's potential to demonstrate how technology can be part of that support plan and what that looks like. And then, you know, things like DFGs, like the central government is encouraging more and more that actually tech purchases should come through these kind of routes. We've not had very clear direction on that yet, but it feels like it's coming down the track. So potentially that's another source if you're not in receipt of care and you're not eligible for a care plan.
So, Amy, I think you've touched on some really interesting things there as well. You know, the eligibility criteria for social care, the disabled facilities grants, the different eligibility criteria. There is room in the DFGs. I know we got Jaquel, who's an expert on this, on the attendance list. And so it's about, you know, both how you may use that as well as other systems to support both the revenue, but in particular capital outlay initially as well. Some really interesting points in the chat about, you know, how Open Day South Gloucestershire Council working to try and support, to gain support from the public and specialist AT team. Some great questions around integrated care. Thank you. I wholly agree. You know, this needs to be part of thinking much more broadly around population health, and perhaps again, where does this link into neighbourhood health and the move towards that, and indeed the Casey Commission. So, you know, a number of really great questions, a really great chat. But I'm afraid we're rapidly running out of time. What I will promise, though, is we'll have another TAPPI Hour and we'll pick up on these issues and present on that. But in the meantime, can I thank all our presenters this afternoon for both your great presentations? Can I thank everybody who's posted really excellent questions into the Q&A box? I'm sorry we haven't had enough time really to answer all of those, but we'll be returning to technology when we focus on the work in Scotland that's happening there with the department of the Digital Health and Care Innovation Centre and their recent report Envision, which also has a very useful cost modelling tool if you're not familiar with it. So that might answer some of the questions. So hold on to those questions. Come and join us again next week when we have our HAPPI Hour HousingLIN Scotland Presents. And before I sort of thank everybody behind the scenes for all their support, and Chris, for your first time leading the show, thank you again. Can I just remind you, if you aren't aware of our AI survey, please do have a look at that and respond by, oh, there it is, it's just been posted, but do respond by the end of this week. But it only leaves me to say I wish you a very pleasant evening, and thank you everybody for participating in a wonderful TAPPI Hour. All the best, mates.